Welcome to the January 10th early release. Our focus today will be on understanding the student learning objective. Our educator effectiveness team continues to work hard to improve support, improve practice, and improve outcomes. Learning objectives. Today, our participants will review data from the November early release activity. Learn that all certified staff will complete an educator effectiveness plan, which will include 2 student learning objectives and 2 professional practice goals. Foster a common understanding of components of a balanced assessment system. Identify the components of a student learning objective. Understand the process for developing student learning objectives. And complete an activity sort of a student learning objective. Our team is very excited to be working with you this afternoon, and thank you in advance for your engagement.
When we met on November 8th to begin our process of learning about the educator effectiveness system, you participated in an activity by responding to several statements. Our educator effectiveness team is using the information from that activity to continue to plan and provide professional learning on these elements. We are going to share the district-wide information with you today for you to have an opportunity to see the results. Your principal will open the link to the staff dot activity, and as a staff, you will review the statements and the results. You will also be able to review your building's responses from that day. It will be interesting for you to see where your responses may be similar or different than the compiled district results. After you've had time to review the data from November 8th, please follow the activity on the slide. You will be doing a turn and talk and responding to the 2 statements. Please pause the presentation to take time to review the November 8th information and turn and talk with a colleague.
The purpose of our professional learning today is to prepare to write student learning objectives when we fully implement the educator effectiveness system in fall of 2014. Today, we will focus on the process of creating student learning objectives. Certified staff will write student learning objectives for fall of 2014. School and student learning objectives will be written around District Vision Card B. Our district will support the writing by providing guidelines and criteria, providing for rigorous standards and continuous student achievement. Today we will focus on assessment literacy, and in the future we will share how a balanced assessment system supports the educator effectiveness plan, which includes student learning objectives and professional practice goals. Foundations of educator effectiveness include improved student achievement through improved practice, rigorous and ambitious goals set as a year-long time frame, purposeful use of data and multiple points of assessments, quantitative data aligned to specific instructional strategies, outcome measurement of academic growth for students, and professional development and improvement for educators.
Thinking back to the November 8th early release, we defined student learning objectives as detailed, measurable goals. Student learning objectives are developed collaboratively by teachers and their evaluators and are based on identified student learning needs across a specific period of time. Because assessment is a very important part of the student learning objective and the measures of student learning, Stephen Miller will be providing a presentation on balanced assessment.
Hello, this is Stephen Miller, Director of Assessment for the Green Bay Area Public School District. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of what a balanced assessment system looks like. This presentation is based on the work of the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. Understanding a balanced assessment system will help you with the development and implementation of school and student learning objectives. Sharing the key aspects of a balanced assessment system will provide a common vocabulary and understanding for all staff in the Green Bay Area Public School District. A balanced assessment system includes various types of assessments. These assessments are typically categorized in one of three ways: as formative, benchmark, sometimes called interim, and summative assessments. Formative assessments are designed to quickly inform instruction. Formative assessment occurs continuously in the classroom, both within and between lessons. Information is used to adjust teaching strategies. Students receive frequent and meaningful feedback on their performances throughout the formative assessment process. Benchmark assessments are designed to benchmark and monitor progress. Benchmark assessment occurs within and between units of instruction. Information is used to identify strengths and gaps in curriculum and instruction. Grade level curriculum may be refined, and teachers may modify instruction for student groups based on their progress. Summative assessments are designed to evaluate cumulative learning. Summative assessment occurs less frequently. Information is used to develop strategic, long-term evaluation of curriculum and programming based on trends over time, and to monitor state, district, and school progress. Formative assessments used prior to instruction typically include student self-assessment, entrance tickets, or baseline quizzes. Other examples may include teacher and student discussion or first day observations. Formative assessment that occurs during instruction should provide students with specific descriptive feedback that informs both the student and teacher in order to make real-time adjustments to teaching and learning. Examples of formative assessments that can be used during instruction include running records, writing rubrics, class blogs, or student journals. Formative assessments may be used between instruction. Typically, these include feedback that allows the teacher to see what progress has been made since the last check-in. Examples of formative assessments that may be used between instruction include open questioning and running records. You may have noticed that running records is listed again. It is important to note that the same assessment may be used in multiple ways during the instructional process. Formative assessments may be used after instruction. These should provide feedback that confirms what the student knows and can do. Examples include exit tickets, portfolios, or performance tasks. Benchmark assessments may be used prior to instruction. These should provide data that shows the teacher the instructional starting point for a chapter, unit, semester, or year. Examples of benchmark assessments that may be used prior to instruction include reading records, a computer adaptive test like STAR, MAP, or SRI, or the Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening, otherwise known as PALS. Benchmark assessments may be used during instruction. These assessments should include data that shows the teacher what learning objectives have been mastered and what needs to be addressed next instructionally for individual students. Examples include portfolios and curriculum-based measures. Benchmark assessments may be used between instruction. These should provide data that tracks student progress over time, providing periodic and multiple data points against benchmarks throughout the year. These can be used to promote improvement in the short term, instructional change, or to monitor student progress. Examples include an interim assessment or a computer adaptive test like STAR. Benchmark assessments may be used after instruction. These should provide data that is used, along with other data points, to establish a grade or score. These can be used to make decisions about instruction, curriculum, and to make program adjustments. Examples include interim assessments and computer adaptive tests such as STAR, MAP, or SRI. Summative assessments may be used prior to instruction. These should provide data that aids the teacher in planning future instruction, in reflecting on general patterns, or establishing the big picture within a class of students. Examples include a prior year's advanced placement exam scores or a prior year's semester exam scores. Summative assessments may be used during instruction. These should provide data that informs classroom decisions, such as groupings or alterations to curriculum maps. Examples include an item analysis of a prior summative test, or end-of-unit assessments and grades. Summative assessments may be used between instruction. In this case, data provides a snapshot, one point in time, of what students know and can do. This can be used to promote program improvement, curricular changes, or instructional professional development needs at the school or classroom level. Examples include benchmark test scores, or end of semester or trimester exams. Summative assessments may be used after instruction. This is typically standardized data, which is used to make decisions, typically on an annual basis, at a macro or very high level about subgroups, schools, districts, or states. Examples include end-of-year or end-of-course exams, or large-scale tests such as the WKCE, Smarter Balanced Assessment, or the ACT. A balanced assessment system includes formative, benchmark, and summative assessments. Understanding the role of each type of assessment in the instructional process will aid you in the development and implementation of your own SLOs. It is important to remember that one assessment may sometimes be used for multiple purposes. More specific details regarding specific assessments and their use in the Green Bay Area Public School District will be forthcoming. Thank you, and now I will turn it over to Peggy Fisher for the rest of your presentation.
The DPI has provided a form or template to assist educators in developing the student learning objective. You should be looking at the white paper copy that has been provided for you in order to participate in this activity. As you look at the Wisconsin School Student Learning Objective Selection Approval Form, you will notice that the first few sections are personalized to reflect each educator's specific professional information, such as name, content area, and grade level, and school building. Following the specific educator section, you will notice that there are 8 components in larger bold print. Together, these 8 components make up the student learning objective. In a few minutes, you will be given some independent time to silently review the 8 components. When time is provided, please read the corresponding questions that are listed under each of the 8 components. As you review the components, we ask that you complete 2 reflective tasks. First, please put a star by 2 components that look like something we currently do or practice as part of our current system of goal setting. Additionally, please circle a component that looks like something new for you as an educator. You will then be given time to turn and talk following your self-reflection. You will now be given time to read each component, review the questions, and complete the 2 reflective tasks. Please pause the presentation at this time. Now that you have had time to personally review the Student Learning Objective template, we are going to take a look at the guide that the DPI has created to assist teachers in planning and developing the Student Learning Objective. You will need the yellow cardstock copy labeled Wisconsin Student Learning Objective Guide for Teachers. You will notice that the guide is essentially the template plus prompts and a listing of criteria that clarify and define each of the 8 components that make up the Student Learning Objective. We will be spending time today examining each of the 8 components and reflecting on our current practice. You will have opportunities to reflect individually and collaboratively as we work to gain an understanding of the framework of a student learning objective. The process for individual reflection today will include two parts. First, you will be provided time to examine the prompts and criteria for the components of the student learning objective using the yellow guide copy. Second, you will be asked to record your ideas under each component related to our current practice on the white template. Each component will be examined individually. There is a process involved in developing a student learning objective. While the first component listed on the template is called the student learning objective, it is actually the last component that a teacher completes. Before an educator can write the student learning objective, the educator should examine, reflect, and complete the other 7 components first. Today, we will not be writing a student learning objective, but rather we will be examining the components of the template to gain an understanding of the framework of a student learning objective. The first component we will reflect on today is the component called Baseline Data and Rationale. For this component, you will be thinking about what initial assessments you review to identify student learning strengths and needs. After identifying the learning needs, teachers will be asked to provide reasoning as to why the goal chosen is relevant and appropriate to the benchmark outcomes. Take a minute to review the prompts and criteria listed under the component called Baseline Data and Rationale. So think, what type of beginning of the year assessments do you currently use in the grade level and content areas you teach? Think back to Stephen's presentation on assessments. Now think, what process is currently used to review and analyze the data? Is it done at a building level, such as with the building leadership team, or by grade level or department? Please take a minute to record the type of assessments you currently use as an initial assessment and how the data is reviewed and analyzed under the component of Baseline Data and Rationale. The second component is learning content. Take a minute right now to read the prompts and criteria listed under the learning content component. Now think about what curriculum you are currently using for the grade level and subjects you teach. Take a minute and record what you currently use under the learning content component on your white student learning objective template. The third component is student population. Take a minute right now to read the prompts and criteria listed under the student population component. Now think about the learning needs of your current group of students. Would you consider the whole group together, or perhaps subgroups of students, either within a class period or across multiple class periods? For example, I might think about the 6 lowest performing students in one of my classes, or I might consider my entire class of students. Take a minute and record what your current student learning needs are under the component on your white student learning objective template. You have just had the opportunity to self-reflect on the three components on the front of the yellow guide sheet: baseline data and rationale, learning content, and student population. In a moment, you will have the chance to reflect collaboratively. Here is the process you will use to reflect collaboratively. In groups of 3 to 4, you will share and discuss your recordings for the three components already reviewed. Then, your group will come to a collective decision and identify one question you have related to any of the three components reviewed. Finally, one member of your group will record the group question on your building reflection sheet. We will pause the presentation at this time for the collaborative reflection. Looking at the yellow copy of the Student Learning Objective Guide for Teachers, you will see that the first component on the back side of the guide is called interval. The interval describes the period of time covered by the goal of the student learning objective. The goal should cover the entire period of time you have the students, typically the entire school year. Semester courses will cover the period of one semester, as the students are only enrolled in the course for a semester. The next component is called Assessment and Evidence Sources. This component describes how you plan to measure the outcome of your objective. Take a minute right now to read the prompts and criteria listed under the Assessment and Evidence Sources component. Now think about the assessments you are currently using for determining student learning needs, for monitoring student learning, and for assessing mastery of learning. Also, think about what sources of evidence you currently use to show student growth. Take a minute and record what you currently use under the Assessment and Evidence Sources component on your white Student Learning Objective template. The third component listed on the back of the yellow guide sheet is targeted growth. The student learning objective is a growth goal. This component describes the goal for student growth. The final outcome should be attainable yet rigorous. The last component is called Strategies and Support. This component describes the methods and interventions needed to support the objective. Additionally, the instructional support and professional learning that are needed to accomplish the objective are identified in this component. Take a minute right now to read the prompts and criteria listed under the Strategies and Support component. Now think about our district goals, your building goals, your own professional learning, and the needs of your students. Take a minute and record the professional learning and instructional support that you are currently involved in or would like to focus on in the future under the Strategies and Support Sources component on your white Student Learning Objective template. You have just had the opportunity to self-reflect on the last 4 components on the back of the yellow guide sheet: interval, assessment and evidence sources, targeted growth, and strategies and support. In a moment, you will have the chance to reflect collaboratively. We will use the same process to reflect collaboratively again. In groups of 3 to 4, you will share and discuss your recordings for the last 4 components reviewed. Then, your group will come to a collective decision and identify one question you have related to any of the last 4 components reviewed. Finally, one member of your group will record the group question on your building reflection sheet. We will pause the presentation at this time for the collaborative reflection. Now we will return to the front of the yellow teacher guide and review the very first component, the student learning objective. The student learning objective is written as a SMART statement: specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Please take a minute to review the prompts and criteria in the student learning objective component. And following the review, you will see some sample student learning objectives. As we begin writing student learning objectives in fall 2014, you will be provided guidelines and criteria by the district in developing your own student learning objectives. The next couple slides are sample student learning objectives that have been developed outside the Green Bay district. The sample student learning objectives are intended to be samples only and may not meet the guidelines and criteria of the Green Bay Public School District. The first sample is a 3rd grade math growth goal. During the 2013-2014 school year, 100% of my students will make measurable progress in mathematics as defined by the STAR online mathematics assessment. Measurable progress means students scoring a 2.7 and below on the pre-assessment will improve by 1.2 grade levels. Students scoring 2.8 and above on the pre-assessment will improve by 1 grade level. And students scoring a 4 and above on the pre-assessment will improve by 1.2 grade levels. The second sample of a student learning objective is a 9th grade disciplinary literacy growth goal. In 2013-2014, all of my 9th grade world history class students will demonstrate measurable growth in writing using primary source documents, literary nonfiction, as measured by the SBAC argument writing rubric. The targeted amount of growth for each student is determined by the pre-assessment baseline scores. Students scoring an overall score of 0 to 1 will be expected to grow 1.5 levels. Students scoring an overall score of 1.1 to 2 will be expected to grow 1 level, or demonstrate growth of 1 level in 2 of the rubric categories. Students scoring an overall score of 2.1 to 3 will be expected to grow 1 level or demonstrate growth in at least 1 of the rubric categories. The last sample of a student learning objective is a high school basic technical drawing, design, CAD growth achievement goal. During the school year, 100% of the students will demonstrate measurable progress in basic technical drawing. At least 85% of the students will score proficient on the end of the year certification performance assessment according to line quality, neatness, accuracy, and title block. Now that you have examined and reflected on all the components of a student learning objective, you will have a chance to work collaboratively to put the pieces of an actual student learning objective together. In a few minutes, you will be given an envelope. In the envelope are directions with 8 separate pieces of paper, each one representing one of the 8 components of a student learning objective. Together as a small collaborative group, You will read the piece of paper and decide which of the 8 components the description represents. Once you agree on the component, please write the name of the component on the top of the piece of paper. When you have finished, you should have all 8 components of a student learning objective. Use the Student Learning Objective Guide for teachers to assist in the process. Please pause the presentation at this time for the sort activity.
Preparation for the Student Learning Objective Approval Conference for both the teacher and principal is very similar to our current Goals Conference process. The Student Learning Objective Approval Conference is still based on the Danielson model. The teacher comes to the conference with the student learning objective in mind, data to support the need for this objective, and action steps, including professional learning to help accomplish the goal. The principal and teacher or teachers meet for a conversation about the student learning objective. The video clip that follows is a sample student learning objective approval conference done with 2 first-grade teachers from Nicolay Elementary School, Taylor Berzana and Jennifer Bino.
Taylor and Jen, thanks for coming in today to talk about your student learning objectives. I'm looking forward to grand conversations. So could we start with you telling me about your goals and why you chose it? I noticed it's very similar. You're working in the same grade level, so you'll be able to collaborate with one another.
Yep, our goals are very similar. We stated that 100% of our students will increase at least one level or maintain their literacy classification as early emergent, late emergent, probable reader, or transitional, according to the STAR Early Learning Assessment by May of 2014.
Okay, so everybody's going to move at least one level, or if they're on level, they'll at least stay there.
They'll stay there.
Higher. Okay. Yours is exactly the same?
I have the same one, and I looked at the Fontes and Pinnell data. I looked at the spelling feature scores from PALS. I've also looked at the STAR assessment data and also informal records from the children and looking at where their needs are. And it really comes down to those foundational skills that will help them in all areas. Reading, writing, and even math.
Tell me more about the math.
My students, especially when it comes to word problems, they're stumped on some of the words. I cannot expect the students to do the math portion if they cannot read the problem. So being able to apply those foundational phonics skills in reading math problems, I think will help them. And they'll be able to be more confident and use those skills throughout all areas.
Thank you. So not just literacy, but math as well. You're finding the same thing?
Same thing, especially on the PALS data. I found that most of them are not able to understand how words work and able to analyze words. Digraphs, blends, any of them are very, very weak in. So I think if we spend more time on those foundational skills, their reading and writing is going to improve. Same thing in their writing. They're finding that they're not using the vowels correctly. Blends and digraphs are not there yet. So I think if we spend a lot of time on those skills, we're going to see a bump in both areas.
Awesome. Thank you. What materials or resources do you think you're going to need to achieve the goal?
We have our Fontes and Pinnell phonics.
Okay.
And there's good resources in there that we can implement during guided reading, also during centers. And we're also using Guided Reading Plus with our students who are below grade level, and that has a word work portion in it also, so we can take data from there. And then we also talked about using interactive writing as an intervention, and we can tie in a lot of those skills, those phonics skills, into that.
Tell me what interactive writing might look like, just a little snippet of it.
Interactive writing, you would choose a read aloud book that the students are very familiar with, do a quick review of the book, and then all together you compose one sentence with the children using sounds and letters that they are familiar with, high frequency words that they already know. You write it together. If the word is very long with complex, more advanced sounds, you write that one for them.
Okay.
Other times they write just the beginning sound. After you compose a sentence, then the students create a sentence of their own, and it can be about anything.
Sure.
You can draw a little picture and then write a simple sentence, and practicing, again, the capital letters, the periods, the conventions, different sounds, and practicing stretching out the sounds. And it's a way to help them with their individual skills in a small group setting, but it's also you can monitor it over time and see their progress.
So do you keep track of those sentences then to keep them in a place that you can look at the growth over time?
Yeah. And it's even fun to take out those spirals and look with the kids. They can see the progress too, and they can take ownership of their learning.
Absolutely. So you start with a small group and then you take it to the individual. Gradual release.
And that actually, I did it yesterday, and that is a really good way to find data, because we did, some of them I had underlined as would be snap words that they would write on a board,
Sure.
and that they didn't know it. So it was interesting to me. That was great for, I could write down, unknown word, things that we can go back and practice. Same thing with some of the diagraphs too that they weren't sure of. So
Some real informal assessment information.
Yeah.
Very good. We've talked about how it's going to impact student achievement. I'm also curious to know about instructional supports that you might need as you go through this goal. How are you going to collaborate, or are there any outside supports that you need in terms of instruction?
we had training through of interactive writing with our literacy coach just a couple weeks ago. So I think that's a good starting point for us. And then she's a great resource during our literacy meetings. We collaborate as a grade level, and we can kind of, brainstorm some possible activities and things that we can do with the kids to keep them moving along. Attending conferences, WSRA would be a good one to attend.
Yes, indeed.
I'd also like to add, we have the nice benefit to, we're offered the opportunity to go observe other classrooms, have a sub-in-our classroom and to go observe maybe a reading, a literacy or center block, and I think that's something I can really learn from, to see how does it look, how do you get those struggling readers where they need to go, and how do you manage the rest of the class. So that's something I'm looking forward to as well.
Awesome. Good opportunity. Back to the goal. Which groups did you target for the goal? Did you do whole class, or did you just pull groups of kids for this goal?
I decided to do whole class.
I did whole class as well. 7 of my 11 students are below grade level right now, and 1 is on grade level. So I think it's important that that highest student maintains grade level, and then the 3 remaining students still continue to grow. But if you lift up those lowest, most struggling students, I think they will all benefit as well.
Okay, very good. You as well?
Yep, and I think that those low students, they're going to receive more support from me, but at the same time during whole group instruction, all those kids are going to get these skills that we're working on to keep moving forward. And that's something that we're really going to focus on as a whole class, because even my high readers, I don't see it carried over in their writing. So we want to try and balance that out a little bit more.
That sounds like a plan. How about differentiation? Even though it's a whole class goal, and you just kind of talked about how you're going to support the higher kids as well, but what other ways of differentiation will you consider?
I think through, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I think in different small groups, one-on-one. Small groups, I'm also going to use flexible and also non-flexible, I guess you would say, grouping, so students can learn from each other. Trying different methods, interactive writing, different guided reading groups based on their levels.
Sure. So you mix them up as you need to.
Mix them up as you need
based
to.
on what they need to learn next. Okay. How long are you going to focus on this student learning objective?
We're going to go all the way from now to May of 2014.
Okay. The whole school year.
And then in the spring we'll also do the other PALS assessment again, so we can kind of monitor and gauge our progress there too.
Okay. How are you, well, you just kind of answered that, but the question is, how are you going to know or measure the student learning? You mentioned the PALS.
And in our goal specifically says that according to STAR, Early Learning Assessment, we're going to have them move up at least one level or maintain their proficient level. And I think that'll be our ultimate goal, but as we're monitoring progress, we're going to be looking at their writing and things through word work and guided reading and things like that to see what words they're able to analyze.
So a lot of formative assessment along the way. Very good. What professional opportunity developments would help support what you're doing?
I think that one conference sounds really great.
Okay, and it is.
That one, like I said, the observations, looking at the interactive writing, getting more experience with that, and collaborating with the literacy coach and other teachers who have
the reading specialists too.
Very good. How can I be a support to you, either in terms of working with you in your classroom or resources I can provide? Are there any,
I think
the conference, I know.
Yeah.
Let's get you to the conference.
I think that just like when we had those 2 hours of time, I think with our literacy coach, I think that was so beneficial to have a big chunk of time to go over a lot of those things.
Sure.
And I think this is a foundational skill where we're always kind of coming back to that. And to have that time, I think, is really beneficial. Also, to have subs in the classroom do peer observations is also a great tool as well.
Okay. I can help facilitate that.
If you have any other suggestions of reading or
Sure.
other strategies to try, I'm open to trying new things and
Sure.
reading about different things as well.
Yep. I know when we met as a grade level, one of the things you wanted to do a little bit more research about is conferring one-on-one with kids about their writing. So we can keep working on that too with professional reading and coaching and whatever else. Perfect. Okay. Now you want to do a double check to make sure it's a SMART goal. Okay. S is specific.
I think it's specific because we're talking about increasing that one level, which is also measurable, but at the same time we're using the STAR early learning assessment, and it's we want to address phonics and word analysis skills is the goal that we want to see. So
Sure.
that's the specific part.
We've got the specific and you just mentioned the measures. So I think we're good there. Attainable? Is it attainable for the kids and realistic?
I think it
so.
is.
Okay.
And I think when we have the next conference, in a few months, we can even relook at the groups and look to see where our challenges are and where we need to change our instruction.
Exactly. So ongoing monitoring of everything. And then time bound?
So
Yep,
we
it's
want it
this
by
May.
May of 2014.
Okay. So you
And
got-
even by that next conference, maybe we can have done another STAR assessment where we can kind of see, is this a good measurable tool?
Sure.
I mean, are we seeing that it's moving them along? So yeah, I think that would be a good thing to look at too.
Okay. Sounds like you're well-versed, well-prepared, ready to go. Already doing it, I know. So we'll just keep talking about it and keep it alive during the year.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You will notice that this conference was just 11 minutes long. That's because the teachers had worked collaboratively on their student learning objective and were well prepared. So the conference was just an open conversation about their student learning objective. Please take a moment to complete the student learning objective reflection activity. This is a 3, 2, 1 turn and talk. You'll be talking about 3 things you noticed, 2 things you wonder, and 1 thing you want to explore. Principals, please pause the video now to allow for this talk and turn.
We'd like to thank each and every one of you for being active participants during the January 10th, 2014 early release focused on student learning objectives. In order to assist the educator effectiveness team at the district level in making preparations for the upcoming early release, we'd like to have each of you participate in an exit activity. In a moment, each of you will be receiving an exit activity that will look very similar to what you see in front of you on the screen. We'll be asking you individually to reflect and respond to the following statements. So now that I've seen what a student learning objective looks like, listening to today's presentation, I now understand. Oh, now I'd like to learn more about. After you've had a moment to reflect and respond individually, you'll have an opportunity to share your responses and your reflections in groups. After you've had an opportunity to do that, you'll be able to share your group responses and reflections on chart paper throughout the room under each of the statements. Your principal will then lead you in a discussion based on what he or she sees on the chart paper. In the end of our time together, your principal will type all the responses on the chart paper into a Google Doc and return it to the district's educator effectiveness team in order to help them prepare for upcoming learning sessions. Once again, thank you for all your work during this session on student learning objectives, and we wish you a wonderful weekend. Principals, you may stop this presentation now and complete your final learning activity.